It's interesting how everyone else was crying about Stellar Blade at a time while I was enjoying Princess Peach Showtime. To this day, I'll probably go back and play through it casually throughout the year, but there is no denying at this point that Princess Peach Showtime is the best game so far of 2024. It's better than Helldivers 2, it's better than Pow World, it's better than Baldur's Gate 3. What isn't better than Baldur's Gate 3? Like a monkey could have more fun with the shit I took this morning, poking it with a stick than you could have with Baldur's Gate 3. But I digress, right? Princess Peach Showtime is fantastic. And right now, there seems to be this very stubborn refusal from the gaming community to acknowledge it, right? People are saying that I've stopped talking about the game. And the reason being that is that, like, I've done everything in it. Like, there are collectibles, there are things to do in the game, there are challenges, right? The game is still a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, I want to move on. I want to play other things, just like I did with Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Wonder. I loved those games, but it's time to move on to the next thing. Princess Peach Showtime has come and gone for me, but there is no denying that this game is spectacular. And rather embarrassingly, it feels like the gaming community is doing this thing where they're just like, oh, I knew Princess Peach Showtime would fail. Oh, I knew a game with a female lead wouldn't succeed. Oh, I'm so excited for Stellar Blade. Like people were really desperate to downplay this game from the moment it was revealed, right? Remember when people were calling it a mini game collection and like Mario Wonder just like the last game on Switch ever? Remember that period where they were trying to say that like the Thousand Your Door was going to be like releasing on the Switch 2 or something? Mm. Like they were like working overtime to downplay this game, right? And now that it's out, like people really, really want to pretend it doesn't exist. But I just want to remind everyone, it outsold Dragon's Dogma 2. It outsold Rise of the Ronin. People like me are calling it like a really underrated gem. And I think, individuals like Arlo, the literal Muppet with a hand up his ass, right? Like I think people like Arlo are doing the game a very big disservice by calling it mid. Like specifically saying that the level segments are not fun because that is objectively not true. I have gone through like a lot of the stages several times now. Particularly like the sword fighter ones. I have like really really gotten to play the game a lot, and it couldn't be more obvious to me that the game is very well designed, very entertaining, and does have a lot of replay value. That was my concern going into the game was that like, oh, I'm not sure how much mileage I'll get out of replaying this, but no, like the game is so well crafted and so fun to play. You will want to go back and play it again. You will want to do everything in it. Like again, I made this comparison before launch, but the game really does feel as if it's like as if it's being judged the same way that like Kirby's Epic Yarn was judged, right? Where people were making all these really arbitrary complaints about it, the art style, the fact it wasn't a real Kirby game, the mechanics, the difficulty in particular, right? There's a lot of overlap between those complaints. And honestly, like the more I play both, I really do feel as if they're unwarranted. I think Epic Yarn is a way better Kirby game than people give it credit for. And I think Princess Peach Showtime, much like that, is very, very unappreciated. I do think this game, this specific release, is going to be the beginning of Princess Peach being treated like a genuine video game protagonist in her own right. Because I do think that it's really interesting to me seeing so many people like try to trash her, like, oh, nobody cares about Peach, she's not popular. Like, she was just in a movie that made a billion, what, $1.5 billion, right? What, $1.5 billion, right? She was huge. Okay, Peach is becoming more popular, right? Peach has established herself as a real video game icon. People are liking her, right? People are liking the direction she's been taking lately. The people like what they've been doing with the character, right? This cope that people have that like, oh, she's just a damsel in distress, like nobody likes that. That simply isn't true, right? And I do think this is going to become more apparent uh, uh, going forward. Is that Peach like completely demolished it this year, with in between the movie and this. And I still see people kind of in denial about that, like, and I do think we're going to see a lot more of this going forward, where a lot of lesser known Nintendo characters start, breaking out and becoming more and more popular. F-Zero is going to come back. Splatoon is eventually going to have mainstream success, right? You're going to have the Mario movie, Zelda. Like, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for the mainstream gaming establishment to downplay the Zelda movie in particular. Like, imagine what's going to happen when it outperforms the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, how are people going to write that off, really? Like, how are people going to downplay that? It's going to be impossible to continue the facade that Nintendo or series like Zelda are like niche and not all that popular when Zelda is getting better adaptations than The Witcher, better than Halo, better than Dark Souls, better than Warhammer 40K, right? Name a single one of those properties that had a better adaptation than the Super Mario Bros. Movie, right? None of them did, right? Fucking Barbie couldn't do it, and she's probably bigger than all of them, right? Like, again, this is the situation we're in now, right? Where Nintendo is slowly starting to throttle out the rest of the entertainment industry. They're bigger than Disney, bigger than like the established movie studios, bigger than like their competitors in the gaming space, and we are going to slowly start seeing that as as these games get more and more popular. I laugh whenever I see Spurgs like try and tell you that like, oh, Fire Emblem Engage is bombed, so the series isn't doing well anymore. Like, yeah, completely unaware that Three Houses was the best-selling game ever in the series, and that Heroes is still pulling in a lot of money, and like the series is just going to keep growing and growing and growing. Like, the idea that there's going to be like some majestic fall off point where everybody just stops playing the stuff, it is just laughable to me, right? It simply isn't going to happen. And we are seeing more and more of this. Like I think in particular, you're going to be seeing a lot of people spurging out about the localization changes in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, right? You're going to see people crying about how Nintendo doesn't respect their history or their legacy or whatever, and it's still the great game it always was, right? Like, there's not really much that anyone can do to change that. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting seeing people like throw everything they have at the wall to try and get Nintendo to fail, try to get something to stick, right? And we're seeing more and more that like the narrative regarding like Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder have completely fallen flat, right? Those games were not hated at all, in spite of the industry's insistence that they should be, and it's only going to get worse from here. There is absolutely nothing the gaming establishment can do to stop Nintendo domination.